Hi Notioneers! Today Notion's rolled out some huge new improvements to their formula functionality. The editor is easier to work with as it supports multiple lines, comments and indentation, and we can do things like formatting a formula's output, mixing output types, and creating more powerful rollups. As a Notion ambassador, I was involved in the development process, and the not so good news is the changes to the formula functionality were made by developers for developers. You don't need to write code to create these new formulas, but you will be using the same principles that developers use when you do. So in this video, I'm going to break down that complexity and show you some simple examples of how the formulas work and how to create the formulas that I use most often while working as a Notion consultant. I am assuming that you have some experience using Notion formulas already, so if you're looking for an entry-level guide, this might not be the video for you. But hopefully by the time we get to the more complicated examples, you'll be able to see how everything fits together. So to kick things off, we've just got this example of a really simple formula which compares the values in the current and target columns just here. And what we're doing here is creating a status property which displays the options of not started, in progress and complete depending on the outcome of our calculation, which is current over target. So basically checking to see whether or not we have started working towards our target. As you can see from this example, the way that we reference properties now is a little bit different in this new editor. So when I write current here, for example, and just hit enter, then our property looks like that rather than having the prop and then open bracket, speech marks, name of the property, close bracket. So that's a lot cleaner and easier to work with. And then if I just type a / there and write target, then that gives us our calculated value. First of all, we're checking to see whether or not that evaluates to 0. And if it does, then we are showing not started just here. If current over target is less than 1, then we're displaying in progress. And if not, then we're displaying a complete option here. So that's basically how you would have written formulas in the old editor, aside from the fact that the way that we're referencing properties now is changed slightly. If we switch to this next tab here, then we've got the same set of examples, but I'm going to show you how you can use the new variables functionality to simplify this formula. So rather than repeating this calculation twice here, because we need to test the outcome of that calculation more than once, what we can do instead is type let and open our bracket here. We'll call our variable progress and just write a comma there. And then all we need to do is write the same formula that we had written in that previous example, just there, hit a comma, and that's basically created our variable for us. So variables allow you to give a name to the outcome of a particular calculation. So in this case, we're naming the outcome progress and our calculation is this. And so if we type progress here now and just close this bracket, then we can see in the preview here that the outcome of this formula is 0. So the third element of our variable function here is the rest of the calculation. And so all we're doing here is making the outcome of the calculation the contents of our variable, which is 0. Now that we've got our variable, we can do some tests on the contents of that variable to produce our statuses. So we do if progress equals 0, then we want to put a blue circle there and make that not started. If progress is less than 1, then we want to display an orange circle here and put in progress. And if neither of those tests evaluates true, then we can put a green circle here and make the outcome of the formula complete. Then we just need to close our brackets. And once we've done that, then we've got our formula here. So as you can see, already a lot cleaner and easier to understand. But wouldn't that formula be so much easier to read if we had line breaks in it to help to break the formula up into different segments that we can read much more easily? Well, with Notion's new formula editor, we can do just that. So first of all, we'll create a new line here for the creation of our variable. And as you just saw there, the new editor also automatically indents new lines for you when you create a new line after an open bracket. So that first line can be where we create our variable. The second line could be our first if statement. And then we could add another line just like that after the outcome of the first test. So if there's another test here that we want to do, then we'll do that on this line instead. And then if we hit Command and return there to create a new line, we can hit Shift and Tab to move that bracket back one, and do the same thing there to create a much more nicely formatted formula. So we know now when we look at this formula, this first line here is the creation of the variable. Second line here is our first test and what the outcome of that test should be if it passes. Third line here is our second test and what the outcomes should be if that test passes or fails. And then we're just closing those brackets just there. So we're doing pretty well there, but there is just one more change that we can make to our formula now to make it even easier to understand, particularly if there's someone else who is reading this formula in the future, or maybe we're reading it in 6 months' time and we've forgotten exactly how we set it up. We can now add comments to our formulas. So let's do that now. First of all we need to do to create the start of a comment is type a / followed by that asterisk symbol, and we'll put create progress variable just here. And to close our comment, which is very important, we need to add another asterisk and a / again, just like that. And you can see that Notion's editor highlights that text in blue to make it a little bit easier to distinguish from the rest of your formula. Then if we create a line break here again, we can add another comment, and this time we can just write status calculation. So we don't need to go into too much detail there. I will show you some slightly more complicated examples in just a minute, but already that just gives us a nice breakdown of exactly what each part of the formula is doing for us there, so it's a lot easier for us to understand it in the future. Lastly, when it comes to this particular type of formula, you can also use the new ifs function to make this a little bit cleaner and easier to read. So if we just add an S at the end of our first if there, then we can remove the second if from here and remove the close bracket from there as well. And maybe we just want to reformat this formula slightly now like that. So basically we have our first test here and the outcome, second test here and the outcome if that passes, and if not, we have the fallback result just here in our formula. So a little bit cleaner and easier to read for us as well. So I hope that's all making sense so far. Obviously, if you have any questions about anything that I covered there, please feel free to add a comment and I'll get back to you with some advice. Now, the other big change that I'm going to show you is formulas can basically be used as rollups now. So you can use them to fetch the contents of properties in related databases and work with that content in another database. But this formula functionality is even more powerful than rollups for a couple of reasons, which I will show you in just a second. So first of all, just to show you a side-by-side comparison of a rollup versus a formula rollup, we've got two databases here. We've got our projects database where we just have one page here for one project, and we've got our task database here where all of the tasks are linked to that one project just there, and one of our tasks are complete. You can see the related pages just here. And if we roll those pages up by looking at the relation property and pulling in the complete property from the related task database and showing original, we get this list of checkboxes just here. And obviously you can see we've got exactly the same list of checkboxes here as well. So how do we create a rollup with a formula? Well, it's actually really simple. Basically, we are just mapping our task relation property here. And I won't go into too much technical detail here, but as you can see, basically the way that the map function works is it allows you to loop through a set of items in a list. So the developers among you will recognize the square brackets here, which indicate that this is an array. And basically our array here is the list of pages in our tasks relation property, which are linked to this particular page. So this list of pages just here. The current part of this formula here allows you to work with each of the items in that list. Basically, we're doing the same thing with each of the items in that list here. And in this instance, we're just saying that we want to fetch the contents of our complete property from each of the items in our tasks relation property. So here we've got our list of tasks. We've pulled in the complete property just here, and we're just displaying the contents of that complete property in our property right here. So pretty straightforward so far. Once you've wrapped your head around the concept of arrays and looping through items in arrays to produce a particular output, what if we want to calculate the number of incomplete tasks that are linked to our project here? Well, again, if we were using a rollup property, again, we just want to create the rollup based on our task relation. We're looking at the complete property again. At this time, we're doing a calculation to count the number of tasks which have an unchecked complete checkbox. So we're just choosing this option right here. And that gives us a 2 because there's 2 pages here which are incomplete. So to do the same thing with our rollup formula, first of all, we're going to map our tasks again and our complete property. Then we're going to filter that list of results to only give us items where the complete property is false, so it's unchecked. And then we're going to count how many items there are in that list. So if I just delete these elements of the formula here and just write them again, first of all, you can see here the output of this formula is the original rollup. Then we can add a filter here. And basically the reason why we're able to just add a dot here and then filter is Notion's editor ignores the fact that there's a line break in between this line and this line. So as far as it's concerned, we're writing dot filter just here, but we're breaking this formula up just to make it a little bit easier to read. So we can do filter current to select each of the items in our map, and then we just want to type the double equals. So we're just saying this needs to equal a certain piece of criteria and put false there. And then if we close that bracket there, we can now see that we've filtered this list of tasks down here to only include the items where the complete checkbox is unchecked. Now that we've done that, we can just calculate how many items there are left in our list by typing length and an open and close bracket just like that. And that gives us a 2. So far, all we've done is replicate the functionality that we already had available to us for rollups and made that process more complicated by having to figure out how to write formulas to do that. But now you're going to see why that hard work will pay off. If we switch over to our labels tab here, then we can create labels like this now, just using a single formula property rather than having to create separate properties for our headings and then individual properties to calculate the outputs of our formulas. And I can show you a couple of different formatting options that we've got available to us here, which we're using to make the text here bold and obviously include the line breaks in between tasks and this line just here. I haven't switched on the new property wrapping functionality that's available in Notion databases here. I've just used the formula to create these new lines for me. So if we open up our formula editor again, first of all, we are creating a couple of variables here. So I'm actually using the lets function, which just like ifs allows you to declare multiple variables in a single formula in a nice clean syntax. So the first variable that we've got here is our variable for the number of completed tasks which are linked to this particular page. And we're using the same formula that we were before. So we're getting our tasks, we're looking at the complete property, we're filtering our list of tasks to only include tasks where the complete property is true, so it's been checked, and we're counting the length of that list of tasks. And then we're doing the opposite for our second variable, which is giving us the number of incomplete tasks. So that should be pretty straightforward for you to understand at this point. Now that we've got those two variables, we can create our labels. And first of all, we just want to add our task label and style it as bold. So here we've got style tasks, which is just tasks written as text. And then we're adding a comma and a B here to style it as bold. If we wanted tasks to be underlined as well here, then we could type a comma and a U as well. And you can see there that that has underlined our text for us. We can do the same with italics. So there's a few different options that you've got there, and there's actually a couple more options that you can use when styling your text in formulas now, which I won't go through in this video, but that's something that's worth exploring too. So now we've got our task heading there. Next, we want to insert a new line, and unfortunately Notion's formula editor doesn't display these new lines at the moment in the preview box just there, so you'll just have to trust me that it's there. To do that, all we need to do is type a backslash and an N inside some speech marks here. And we're using the plus to add this element to our formula output. You can also just use Command and Enter inside some speech marks to insert a line break, but this makes the formula a little bit easier to read in my opinion, as long as you can remember what that new line break symbol is. And then we can display our labels. So first of all, we want to display the number of completed tasks. And this is a slightly complicated element of the formula, because if there's one completed task, then we want to make our label here completed task, singular. And if there's more than one completed task or 0 completed tasks, then we want to have an S at the end of our tasks here. And so we've just got that little bit of logic created here. And then we want to do exactly the same thing for our incomplete tasks. So we've done that just here. So if we hit done, then the output of that formula is we have 1 completed task, 2 incompleted tasks. If we update our list of tasks just here, now we have 2 completed tasks and 1 incomplete task. So that gives you a nice summary of your progress towards completing that project without you having to actually open the project's page. But what if we also want to see a list of the incomplete tasks which are linked to our project? Well, if we uncheck that completed checkbox just there, first of all, the good news is we can do that now, whereas before, because we couldn't filter our rollups, we couldn't display that list of incomplete tasks in a database property at all. Now that we can, there's a couple of different ways that we can create this formula. The first, which gives you this list of tasks names as text, looks like this, where we're working with our task relation property. We're filtering that list of tasks to only show us tasks where complete is false. And then we just want to display the task name. So we're mapping that list of items that we created here, and we're fetching the name property just there. The alternative way to format this content is if we comment out this last line here, like that, that gives us links to the pages themselves. So if we wanted to be able to click into our incomplete tasks here and just see their details, then we can actually click on those links and open those pages in our side peek view for the database. So that gives us a really nice, easy way to view more details about those tasks as well. So as you can see now, this functionality is a lot more powerful than rollups were. So this is a really exciting addition to our toolbox. I'm just going to show you one last formula that you can create using this new formula functionality, because this is one of the types of formulas that I've created a lot whilst working with clients in the past. And before, we had to use quite a messy setup in order to get to this result. So let's say we have a contacts database and we want to see the date when we last met with a contact and the date when we're next due to meet with a contact, to make sure that we're not neglecting them at all. We've got our contacts database here, similar setup to our projects and tasks database, where it's just contacts here and then our meetings database here. We've got a relation property linking meetings to contacts, and we're just recording the date of each of these meetings here, which is the information that we're going to be working with in these formula properties. So if we open up our formula property for last met just here, this time we're working with a list of meetings. We're going to filter out all of the meetings which are after today, or actually filter out every meeting that's after this particular moment in time. Then we're going to get the dates of those meetings. Then we're going to sort those dates so that we have the earliest date at the beginning of the list, and then we're going to get the most recent date from that list by fetching the last item in the list. So if we just remove these last couple of bits just here, then you can see what the output of this first section of the formula is. Basically, it's giving us the 2 meetings that are linked to this contact, which have dates before now, and it's telling us what those dates are. Then if we add our sort, then we're going to reverse the order of those dates to make sure that we have our earliest date at the beginning of our list and the latest date at the end of our list. And then all we need to do is use last to get that last date from the list, which is going to be the most recent date before this moment in time, and that's when we last met our contact. And then if we click into last met to, just to show you quickly, you can format these formulas differently. I think they're a little bit more tricky to work with when it comes to adding comments to the formulas, but this type of structure does give you this quite nice cascading view of all of the different functions that are being applied here. So potentially this can make it easier for you to see which functions are being applied to which elements of your formula. That's just something to bear in mind. And if we look at our next meeting property here, then you can see again, we're working with a map of meetings. We're filtering those meetings to only display meetings which are after this moment in time. And then we're getting the dates of those meetings again. We are sorting those dates in ascending order once again, but this time we're getting the earliest date from that list, because if we look at our list of results now, we're obviously displaying the earliest date at the beginning of our list here. And because we have a meeting that's scheduled at a later date as well, in order to get the next meeting that we've got scheduled with this contact, we just need to use first rather than last. So I hope I've shared a couple of formulas here which will make good additions to your Notion workspace in the future. And hopefully you can see the power of this new functionality, as well as how to apply it in quite a few different situations now. Again, if you have any questions at all about using these functions, just let me know in the comments, and stay tuned because I will soon be back to my regular programming, which is generally focused on Notion automation. But if Notion releases any other features in the meantime, then I will of course be making more videos to show you how to use those as well.